Hey guys, I know it's been a while since I posted a video because I've been busy with like worlds and all that, but I just thought I'd go through an archetype that a lot of people have played for like a long time over lots of different opuses, and a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about Modern Lightning, and it's fairly popular. But yeah, for something so popular, it has such a varied builds and like different cards people play. So I just want to talk about the version I play, which I'm actually really keen on at the moment. I've kind of gone here and there. I've like worked with Modern Lightning each opus and just kind of seen how it goes, and it's always been like all right, but I've never really been that excited about it. I've never really found a Modern Lightning deck that I was like really happy with. But this one is actually the closest I've ever been. I actually really like this at the moment. I haven't played it as enough yet to be able to say, oh, it's really, really good, but I do think it's the best Modern Lightning deck I've played for a long time. But there's a few, maybe three main differences between this list that I have here and a lot of the other lists that I see. One thing about this version is that I don't play Estinian at all, none of them. So both cards, I don't have a problem with them. They're both actually pretty good, but I feel like they don't actually add anything to the deck at all, really. I mean, the 5-cost Estinian is basically just an expensive way to deal damage. Like, the card itself doesn't actually really do anything except damage. And that's alright that you've got a single four that can do 2 damage each turn sort of thing, but the fact that it doesn't gain you any cards, gain you any CP, and once it's removed, it hasn't achieved anything, so to speak, unless you kill them. Like, even something like Zemus, it lives for a turn, then even if they kill it after that turn, you've already used this effect once and gained that CP value. So for an expensive card that literally doesn't actually give you anything, I don't like that, especially in a deck like Mono Lightning, which really fights for its CP, and like, but you basically want to be it's a tempo deck, so to speak, so it doesn't really do the ridiculously unfair things that other decks like Lulu do, where they just get free removal or whatever. Anyway, I will talk about Zemus quickly. So, obviously I don't need to explain that it's a good card. Everyone knows that, and most people do play it. But I do want to emphasize how ridiculous that card is if you can just have it live for like a single turn, which is not as hard as people think it is. Like, you know, forwards can live. There is times when you can play a forward and your opponent actually can't remove it straight away. And in Zemus' case, like, there is no way to play around it, so to speak. Like, you have to just kill it or keep it frozen. Otherwise, it will win you the game. Like, the advantage you gain from its effect, so you gain 2 CP every time you use it, and the flexibility of the forwards you have in your break zone, especially the lightning forwards, stuff like Edia, and then you've got cheap bodies as well, and Iluas, you got constant threat of Ilua, like, all those cards that you can just keep bringing out with Zemus is off the charts. So yeah, that is a huge reason to play Mono Lightning. But previously, I mean, our Sid is obviously quite good, although he's become mostly pretty fair these days. He's not nearly the unfair powerhouse he used to be. But so recently, Zemus has really only been the only unfair thing that Lightning can do. Until now, at Opus 7, we have Sid Previa, and again, this is a card that most people have identified is really good, and I don't need to, like, you know, it's not like oh, I bet you guys haven't seen this card before kind of thing, but I will reiterate that, yeah, the CP value you get early on, and the efficiency of playing 2 backups off Sid Previa is ridiculous. So I think the funny thing about it, though, is it actually kind of shoehorns your backup line. Like, these 17 backups right here, I cannot see a single change to be made other than which searches you play based on the other cards you play. So here I'm just playing 2 Grammars, 2 Cedar Clan Gully because I have Al Cid and Ilua in my deck. The other options are like King of Amicia, Restrictor, there's a couple others, Duke Goltana. So depending if you play forwards that those can search, then you can slot those in as well. But the actual setup of the backups there, you know, you're always going to be playing 3 Sid Previa, 3 Lulu, two or three Luigio, 2 Alpha Nord, and then 3 Black Mage. Now, Black Mage is a card that some people don't play 3 of in their Lightning decks, and I think that's really, like, really dumb. This card is off the charts, by far the best 2-cost backup in Lightning, one of the best 2-cost backups in the game. You gotta remember that 2-cost backups, you always have to play them. So if they give you something for free, that is like literally free. Like, if you get something for free off your 2-cost backup, then that was a card you're already playing. Now you're just getting something extra for nothing. You didn't actually invest anything into that. And neg 4k power is pretty big, especially in a deck like Lightning, which has, you know, other damage packets lying around. Like, it can push your Al Cid into killing things without having Ununited Rigdia, so you can then have like Ilua, Cypher, Zapped. Then obviously having 2 Black Mage to kill an 8k or a 7k, that's insane value, pretty much auto win. Like there are some games you could just win on the spot by having 2 black mages together. So just the stuff it can do for you is so good, and it doesn't cost you anything because it's just a 2-cost backup still. As for other new Opus 7 cards, so besides the Preview, we've got Ramuh and then the Emperor. Now the Emperor is a card that I don't see many people running in Mono Lightning, and I think it's quite underrated. Honestly, I think it's very good. I think it adds a lot to the deck that it didn't have before. The big body by itself is decent. Like, Lightning typically hasn't had large bodies, so having that large body is nice. Obviously, you don't just play it for that, though. Its entry ability, the Dull 2, like, that's basically like an orphan, right? That's like an orphan in Mono Lightning. And for a deck that is like a tempo deck and needs to actually kill someone before they stabilize, so to speak, being able to Dull 2 and do the finishing blow is very good. On top of that, it does synergize with your other cards. Even its passive, and also on entry you get the triggers of its passive. If they build a decent enough board, and that is actually one of the ways to beat Mono Lightning, because Mono Lightning doesn't have board clears usually, other than Exodus, which I'm not a fan of. But if your opponent identifies that and puts a bunch of forwards on the board, the Emperor combined with your other cards can actually really push through those boards. Like, you dull, they got 4 guys out with like a Leather and a Viking, you just dull 2 of them and then ping off the Leather and the Viking. Or if they've got like a decent-ish sized guy and a couple of other little guys, dull those 2, then put the other one into range of, dying to your little like Cypher zapped or whatever, you can just swing into it. And then even after the turn after you played, if it lives, you've got this 10k body for starters, but also your Ramuh, your 3-cost Ramuh, can now kill 10ks. Because you can do a 7k to one thing, and then it could even be a 5-cost or more, and then dull another thing, and then you get the extra 3k on top to kill that card. So often Lightning can have trouble with larger bodies, 8k or higher, because it can't ping them off as easily, especially ones that Eddie can't get to. Emperor actually lets your Ramuh get to those bodies. The Opus 7 Ramuh, very, very good. Definitely, straight away in my head, it takes the slot of Odin 7, because the EX is almost always functions the same as Odin 7. There are very few boards or forwards that you won't be able to get that big value off the EX that you would off Odin. But it's also actually a very solid card to cast from your hand. The fact that it's neg power, not just damage, means that you're like zapped, Cypher, even your guys lying around from Alcid, Rigdi or whatever, can beat anything in combat. Like, it's very hard to block Lightning without losing your forward these days, because of now we have that Ramuh as well. So there are that's 9 cards that this deck has gained in Opus 7 that I think are noticeably good cards. Like, they're not just like little things, little buffs or whatever. They're actually like relevant things that this deck has gained in the new set, which is really cool. But the last card I want to talk about, and this is probably my favorite thing at the moment, is Twilight Odin. This card is typically before now, or sorry, I mean Twilight Odin existed before, but anyway. Typically, Mono Lightning hasn't been able to do that many unfair things. Zemus is the main one. Now we have Sid Previa as well. But also, Twilight Odin, in my opinion, is another way for Lightning to do something unfair. Like, killing something for 1 CP effectively is really, insane. That's like Dudaluma level of, killing things for basically nothing. Obviously, you have to work for it a bit. Like, you have to actually let that attack go through. But that's not actually very hard in Lightning. You've got Edias can kill things. You've got Emperor, Dull 2. That is a big one. Now that we have the Emperor, that makes Twilight Odin a lot more reliable. You've got your Ramuh, which can kill one, dull another one. Black Mage can lower something. But Twilight Odin, if they only have forwards that are weaker than Twilight Odin, then they're going to lose something anyway, because they're going to have to block it. So they're going to have to chump block it. They'll lose that forward. They won't take the damage, obviously, but they can't just let it through, because then their forward will die anyway. The other thing I should mention to why Twilight Odin is specifically good in Mono Lightning is Lulu, putting it from 7k to 8k. The 7k to 8k jump is really big. That's like a very large power jump in this game, because a lot of the efficient instant speed removal is 7k. Glacier, Ramuh, and Fisoya are the 3 big examples, but those cards do cover quite a decent range of decks, so having the threat of those being able to kill your Twilight Odin is not ideal. But in this deck, when you have Lulu, there are much fewer ways to deal 8k at instant speed. So it's really hard for your opponent to get to your Twilight Odin, because it's a monster most of the time, except when you're attacking with it. It's much harder for them to deal with, which really adds to how much of a constant threat it is and the amount of pressure it provides just while it's sitting there. The main thing that would make it maybe not as good is the little bodies lying around like Layla and Viking can block it and not care. However, you have the ways to kill those things. In fact, Lightning has one of the best punishes in the game to Layla and Viking, which is Rigdia. So basically any other deck in the game, Layla Viking turn 1 is really good and there's practically no punish. In Lightning, if you Rigdia a turn 1 Layla with Layla Viking, that's a very solid, like very good. And then of course even later in the game though, as more Laylas and Vikings come out, Rigdia is always going to be decent like that. That's why there's 2 Rigdias here and 2 Onion Knight instead of 3 and 1. In fact, Onion Knight's probably the worst forward in this deck. I still play it just because it's so good with our Sid, and also you have those extra damage bits lying around from Rigdia Emperor. Can sometimes help push Ramu, or like a Zapped or a Cypher who've swung in and they've blocked it. You can use the Onion Knight to consolidate that into a kill. So I will quickly talk about Zapped and Cypher. So I keep mentioning them because they are little bodies that are efficient. You can just basically throw them on the board whenever. And not only are they, you know, not like just damage that you can keep swinging when you've got, you know, stuff like Emperor, Ramu, whatever, you can keep taking away your opponent's bodies and get that free damage. They also block Famfrit. So Lightning, Mono Lightning is, in my opinion, probably one of the best decks, maybe even the best deck against Mono Water. And other water-based decks often, because water doesn't have that much reliable spot removal. So Zemus is really good against water. Basically, their answers to Zemus are Famfrit and Cloud of Darkness and Fisoya with something else. So usually Ephemeral Summoner for Kuchlan or whatever. But you know, if you've got stuff like Cypher and Zap lying around, like this deck, this version in particular, it's incredibly hard for them to get Famfrit to get to anything useful. Basically, their Famfrits are usually dead because you have Cypher and Zapped lying around, or, you know, Rigdia's Onion Knights, whatever. Anyway, so Famfrit's probably never going to be killing Zemus, which means they need Cloud of Darkness. But having Lulu puts him to 9k, they need 5 bodies for a Cloud of Darkness to remove Zemus by itself, which is pretty hard for them as well, and you can threaten responses to that. So you've got Ramu, for example, and then of course if you're, you know, threatening to ping off their Laylas and Vikings with Rigdia and Emperor or whatever, it's hard for them to get to 5 forwards. That's quite a large amount. And then the last one, Fisoya, I mean, fair enough. That's just Fisoya. That's what it does. You know, if they have all the cards that combo with it and match up with it and kill your stuff with Fisoya, you can't really do anything about that. But at least you do have the damage pressure in Lightning to potentially punish Fisoya or prevent her from going off too many times, especially with Ilua, who, again, she's pretty hard for them to remove. They basically need a Famfrit it. So there's a lot of things about this deck that kind of actually work really nicely together, and like I said before, I don't feel Estinian would add anything to it at all. One card I would consider trying is the 1-cost Rumza. I don't mind him at all, and, you know, obviously you can put Duke Goltana into one of the searchy slots, probably over a Gramus, but I don't really feel I need him right now, but that's definitely an option. The last thing I would have, I'm going to try adding, I haven't tried yet, so that's why it's not here, but I really want to try Yuri. I'd probably only play 1 for now. If it turns out to be really good, which in my head it does seem quite good, then maybe I can up it to 2. But yeah, the more I think about it, Yuri's abilities work really well in this deck because the Dull and Freeze lets Twilight Odin push through really easily, and the 4k consolidates into bigger kills, like I said before, with stuff like Zap swinging in or Onion Knight. Obviously the Dull and Freeze goes with the Emperor as well, you get the 3k and stuff like that. But yeah, I do feel like Mono Lightning is very solid, and is actually probably better now than it had for a lot of what it's been in the last few sets anyway. So if you want to try out any of these ideas or whatever, yeah, hopefully it will give you an edge maybe in your next tournament. But I'm really liking it at the moment. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.